The United States is more than just a country. It's a union of 50 separate states, each with their own unique culture, laws, and history. Consequently, there's a wealth of strange, little-known facts about each state that may surprise you. Or would that be a commonwealth? So, today, we're looking at some strange historical facts about US states. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other countries you'd like to hear about. Okay, let's get nifty about our 50. In September of 1928, Dr. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. Unfortunately, Fleming's strand of miracle mold, Penicillium notatum, was impossible to produce in the quantities needed for widespread use. So, for over a decade, Oxford-based scientists Howard Florey and Norman Heatley experimented with differing mold growing and harvesting techniques, and hopefully got out of the lab once in a while too. Gotta stretch those legs, docs. As the UK entered World War II, the researchers traveled to the US to continue their experimentation. In the summer of 1941, lab assistant Mary Hunt entered their Illinois research facility with a cantaloupe she found in a nearby grocery store, covered in a, quote, pretty golden mold. After conducting tests, the scientists realized that Hunt had discovered Penicillium chrysogenum, a strand of the mold that created 200 times more penicillium than Fleming's original discovery. After mutating this strand, researchers were able to create 1,000 times more penicillin than with its predecessor. This proved to be invaluable in the following years. While 18% of soldiers perished from bacterial pneumonia in World War I, less than 1% succumbed to the illness in World War II. Illinois? More like not getting ill, Illinois. Sorry. The oddly named Singapore, Michigan once boasted the ability to produce 300,000 board feet of lumber a month. And you can take our word for it, that is so much lumber. The city grew as the lumber industry provided a fresh and thriving economy for the area for nearly 50 years, before production came to a screeching halt. After the Great Fire of Chicago burned most of the city to the ground in 1871, you know, the one that damn cow started, lumberyard owners in Singapore stepped up to provide the city with the construction materials it required to rebuild. While the town of Singapore successfully restored Chicago, the process eliminated the majority of the trees in the Allegan County forests. With no further resources, the lumber town was forced to relocate its buildings or abandon them completely, leaving the town deserted. Boy, Michigan has bad luck with things like that. At somewhere between 260 million and 325 million years old, North Carolina's French Broad River is one of the oldest rivers in the world. But it's not polite to bring that up to the river in conversation. Beginning in Rosamond, the river flows independently for almost 220 miles before flowing into the Holston River in Tennessee. However, unlike most rivers which flow southward, the French Broad River moves on a northern path because it's apparently some kind of upstart nonconformist waterway. The streaming water joins the Tennessee, Ohio, and Mississippi rivers to create a river system that spans 4,000 miles before being distributed into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And you know all those free-thinking rivers had gruff dads played by 90s character actors who just didn't understand. On June 20th, 1782, the bald eagle was selected by Congress to be the symbol of the United States, narrowly edging out that picture of dogs playing poker. Soon after, the predatory bird's likeness was spread throughout the fledgling country's branding, printed on documents, carved into buildings, and stamped on currency. But the eagle featured on US currency wasn't imaginary, nor some kind of theoretical Platonic ideal of a bald eagle. It was actually created in the likeness of Pete, the mint eagle, a bald eagle that took residence in America's mint in the 1830s, and probably got $0 and/or birdseed for the use of his image. Where's a bird lawyer when you need one? Historians are unsure of whether Pete the Mint Eagle became the mascot by living near the first mint that ran until 1833, or if he resided in the larger second mint established years later. But they do know he was so comfortable with his living conditions that the workers allowed him to hang out around the coining presses. That sounds cute, but it was actually a terrible idea, for all the reasons having a loose bird in your factory would be. One of his wings got caught in a moving press, hindering his ability to fly and search for food, and then he tragically passed away. Man, where is that bird lawyer we asked for? Unwilling to part with their beloved mascot, the Philadelphia mint workers had Pete's body taxidermied and placed in an honorary space of the factory, where he remains to this day. Caw. Air Force Colonel Howard Richardson was participating in a routine flight training mission in 1958 off the coast of Savannah, Georgia, when he realized he was about to hit another plane. In a flash, Richardson made the decision to drop the 7,000-pound nuclear bomb his B-47 carried to hopefully prevent a national catastrophe. As the weapon of mass destruction plummeted toward the sea, the planes collided. The accident resulted in extensive damage to both planes, but the crews miraculously escaped unharmed. Meanwhile, the nuclear bomb was nowhere to be found. After 2 months of searching for the weapon, the U.S. Navy called off efforts, believing that while the location of the bomb was uncertain, it was better left in its watery grave undisturbed. A 2001 report of the incident agreed, suggesting a recovery attempt would risk setting off the bomb. In 2004, a retired Air Force pilot detected what he believed to be an unusual amount of radiation emitting from an area of the sea, but government officials, presumably inspired by the mayor from Jaws, assured the public that there was nothing to worry about, claiming the discovery was the result of naturally radiating minerals found in the region. Have fun at the beach this summer, Georgians! When you think of Hot Springs, South Dakota, you probably think of, well, hot springs. Honestly, we have no idea. Statistically speaking, no one's ever been there. But you should think of mammoths, because the area boasts the world's largest collection of mammoth fossils. In fact, paleontologists have unearthed 58 Columbian mammoths and 3 woolly mammoths. Researchers estimate that the original site where the mammoths were found is over 140,000 years old, and no other North American mammoth and woolly mammoth fossils have ever been discovered in such close proximity. Maybe they were friends. Have they discovered a saber-toothed squirrel with an acorn? On April 23, 1982, Key West Mayor Dennis Wardlow announced that the Florida Keys were seceding from the Union and declared war against the U.S. That's pretty bonkers even for Florida. Here's why it happened. 5 days earlier, the federal government had established a checkpoint on the southern tip of Florida to perform illegal immigrant and drug searches. When potential visitors began canceling their trips to the Keys because of the reportedly long wait times at the inspection post, Wardlow felt retaliation was necessary. In a move that would immortalize him in the Impulse Control Hall of Fame, the mayor announced that the government checkpoint constituted a foreign border and that the Florida Keys were seceding from the Union. Wardlow announced he was now the prime minister and renamed the island chain the Conch Republic. Weird, we figured a guy like that would have gone for a Jimmy Buffett lyric. To ensure the U.S. understood the seriousness of the issue, the mayor turned prime minister declared war against the U.S. by breaking a loaf of Cuban bread over the head of a man dressed as a U.S. Navy admiral. Wardlow then ended the protest by surrendering to the uniformed man and requesting that the government send $1 billion in aid. The federal government never sent that money, but they did immediately halt its inspections, ensuring the Conch Republic remained a geopolitical power player in the years to come. To counter the expense of rising dairy costs in 1869, inventors created oleomargarine, a fake butter that promised to provide the same quality, texture, and consistency of butter without the higher price tag. This infuriated dairy farmers and butter lovers throughout the U.S., and they would turn out to be a surprisingly petty bunch. In an attempt to skirt the sales of the invented butter substitute, the 1886 Margarine Act was instituted, requiring harsh tariffs on the manufacturers. Some states even banned the product completely, making it illegal to be sold in stores. But in New Hampshire, delegates instituted a law stating that all margarine had to be dyed pink to ensure potential buyers understood that they were purchasing a chemically induced fake product and not real butter. If that seems a little over the top to you, don't worry. The Supreme Court felt the same way and struck the law down in 1898. And yet somehow pink lemonade keeps slipping through the cracks. 311 is a rock reggae group from Nebraska known for tunes like Amber, Down, and Beautiful Disaster. And while the band and its fans started celebrating 311 Day on the apt date March 11th, the numbers weren't the initial inspiration for the group's name. Instead, the group borrowed the numbers from the Omaha, Nebraska Police Department, where officers used 311 to identify indecent exposure reports. The band was inspired after their original guitarist, Jim Watson, was caught streaking in their hometown. Long live rock and roll. In the US, most prisons are run by the state, but the amount of designated funding is drastically different in each state. For example, Mississippi has the most prisoners incarcerated per prison and spends roughly $18,000 per year on each prisoner. Meanwhile, Wyoming spends much more, around $130,000 per prisoner. Various elements contribute to these discrepancies, as most of the funding is awarded to the correctional officers' pay and benefits, the upkeep of each prison, and the programs and resources they provide, like rehabilitation centers and juvenile justice initiatives. But the point is, if you're going to go to prison, you'll probably want to do it in Wyoming rather than Mississippi. In the early 1850s, Senator Jefferson Davis, who later became both the president of the Confederacy and the namesake of boss J.D. Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard, began endorsing the concept of camel travel for the southwestern states. His theory was simple. As the U.S. expanded, people needed a trusted way to transfer their goods. Therefore, camels? Please keep in mind it was the 1850s, so Jeff had seen trains by then. Unfortunately for Davis, the rest of the Senate didn't share his vision. Undeterred, he continued to promote his theory until he was named Secretary of War under President Franklin Pierce. Equipped with his new title, he slyly added a $30,000 camel allotment to a bill intended for a bridge repair in Illinois in 1855. And in 1856, Texas became the home state of 75 camels. Until the Civil War, the camels successfully completed multiple long journey expeditions. But after the Civil War, most of Jefferson Davis's policies were eliminated along with the Confederacy. You hate to see camel-lateral damage. Sorry again. So what do you think? Which of these stately facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from Our Weird History.